Hi, welcome to Mini Shop's How to Sculpt videos with myself, Elizabeth, and today I'm going to show you how I make polymer clay faces on miniature scale. I've been sculpting for the past 18 years with polymer clay, and while there are probably lots of ways to sculpt these faces, this is the way that I've taught myself, and I want to share it with you. I'm exaggerating the features for you guys, so I make the features a little more muted with my sculptures, but these are just slightly exaggerated so you can see a little better on the mini scale of how to do things. You can adjust them as to the person you're trying to make. Just give you some guidance as we're sculpting. I'd love to see the photos of what you guys make. That's my favorite part of these videos. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. And without further ado, let's get sculpting. Start with a rundown of the materials you need. You'll need some clay, of course, your person's skin color, their hair color, their eye color, a little bit of white, and then a little bit of black. You'll also need either a toothpick or some wire for the armature, and then some snippers and some pliers if you want to use the wire. The tools that I like to use are a potter's needle, but you can also use a toothpick for this, an X-Acto knife, but you can use a butter knife. And these tools are great for small detail work. I use them a lot. This is the one I use the most. It's a silicone dowel tool, and it is really great for etching those fine details and smoothing them together. And these guys are good for, this one's really good for the nose cavities and stuff like that. These were good for the eye indents. This one as well is really good for the eye indent, and these have larger balls if you're doing a larger scale. I'll have those linked below. One way to start, if you want to make a person anatomically correct, is to print out a paper, say, of them from the front, so you can see their entire structure, and then you can base the size of them on that. That's where you would take your wire, and I would fold it in half to create a little armature, and you would twist this wire around itself. I start by baking the head, and then I add the hair, and then I bake it again, and then I add the body, and then I bake it again. So it's a multiple step process. This is basically just the support backbone for your person. And you can also do this by holding one edge in a drill, and then your pliers on the other edge, and then twisting it with a drill. That takes a lot less time. I just don't have a drill at the moment, but I'm just showing you quick basic steps of this. I'll have that like so. For the face, make sure it's all warmed up first, and then you'll take some clay, and I make my people about 3 to 4 inches tall. So I start making the ball of the head a little bit smaller than what I want to make, because once we add all the layers of the features, then it will be larger than we started with. Roll it into a ball, rolling it evenly between your palms, and we start with a circle, and then we'll turn it into an oval slightly by rolling it back and forth. And if there's little creases like this, you can smooth them out with your finger and roll it again. I'll take my wire or my toothpick, and I'll stick it into the head at the base. And it's okay if you squish this part a little bit, because it's just the structure. Tap it around to smooth it in, so make sure it doesn't wobble. That's basically. Then you'll take a little bit more clay for the neck. You'll warm it up. Once we have a ball, we'll roll it back and forth until you think it might wrap around this area. Then we'll give it a little flattening. Make sure it's even. I decide that this is the front of my head, so I'm going to put the seam in the back. Set that on your wire or your toothpick. Wrap it around. If there's excess, just pinch it off. And that's the start of your neck, but there's our beginning. Here's when I take my smoothing tool and I smooth that seam. Sometimes I like to smooth with my fingers first and then with the smoothing tools, and then sometimes it's better or easier to smooth with the smoothing tools and then your fingers. Then we're gonna take our potter's needle and make a little line down the middle here, and then from top to bottom in the middle. And then we are going to put dot on either side, leaving space for the nose. So making these eye dots about 4 potter's needles away from each other. Then we'll take this little tool, just make a little indent from the start of the dot over on both sides. And it's okay if this isn't perfect because we'll do a lot of shaping of this, and so it will be different. Take your bald end too, and you can make it just a little bit more even. And the size you do slightly depends on the size of your person's eyes, but we make these eye sockets bigger than the eye that's exposed because we'll add the eyelids and the other features on top. So once you have where the eyes are gonna go, we'll start to add the other features. I like to start by adding the chin. So take a little bit more clay, roll it into a ball, and then you roll it into kind of a little snake. And then it depends on who you're trying to make. If your person has some high cheekbones up here, you'll want to set this right up here. If they have a very small, narrow chin, you'll want to start right here. You can put it in the middle, that sort of thing. For just kind of a standard person, I start about halfway between the eye and the base of the chin, and then I loop it around to give that chin shape. You can either cut or press that off. Look from the side, make sure it's jutting out a little bit, and then add a tiny piece of clay, roll it into a ball, and set it right there at the center. Next, take some clay, split an amount into two, so we're rolling 2 even balls, and we're setting them right below the eyes for the cheeks. Now, you can look at your person and see if they have large cheeks or if they have small cheeks or if they're higher up towards their eye or they're lower. It all depends on your person. Next, we'll start on the nose. We'll take a little bit more clay, about twice as much as we took for the bottom chin, and we will roll it into an even skinnier snake. We will set that right between the eyes and about in between the cheeks. I like to bring it up past the eyes and then kind of pinch it off so it smooths back there. Add another tiny snake to the bottom here, just to give that edge of the nose. And 2 tiny little balls I like to set at the sides of the nose. Then I like to take another small piece of clay and set it right below the nose. And this one, I take my knife and cut off. All right. Now you see this person's forehead's getting a little small. We'll take some clay, about the combination of all these features so far. We'll roll it into a ball and then into an oval, and then we'll flatten it and we'll tap that down like so. Once we have this, sometimes I like to put a little tiny piece of clay here, especially if your person's bald, then you'll want a smooth portion here. You can add more clay, but if you're adding hair to your person, then this base can kind of be left blank and you will add hair later. Now take your tool, and it doesn't matter where you start smoothing, but just start smoothing in those seams together. And you can tap them with your finger after you smooth them. Now this is just the base person, and there's a lot you can do to deviate from just the single base because everybody is super unique. This is kind of just the rough structure. So keep smoothing those seams. The smoothing of the features is what takes some of the longest time sometimes. Now, once you have this kind of crude base of your person, you can see if you'll need to redo those eye sockets. Just smooth them out, make them nice and even. Then you need to take a little bit of your white clay. Take about as much white clay as you think will fit in one of those eye sockets, and then split it in 2. One way to evenly split things in 2 is by rolling it out into a thin snake and then folding it in half and then cutting at that center line. Then you'll roll those 2 into balls and then back and forth into ovals. Then we will set those in the little eye sockets one at a time, but don't press them in yet until you have them both in and are happy with their placement. I'm going to take my small indenting tool, indent one, indent the other. Okay, we'll take our eye color and about as much as we think will fit in one of the circles, and then again split it into 2, roll those into balls, size those up. Then we'll just ever so slightly place them in those indents. Just give them a little tap with my finger and then indent again, depending on the way you want your person looking. Make a little indent. Now there's something you can do if you would like. I sometimes draw little lines with my knife across the eye, one side to the other, just to kind of look like the lines in your eye. You don't have to do this part, it just sometimes is fun. Now take your black clay, again, as much as you think might just fit in one of those indents, And you will split it in two, roll those into little tiny balls, plop them into those indents. Once you like the size, give them a little tap, and that is the start of our eyes. Now, what we're going to do is take our skin color clay and just ever so slightly roll it out into tiny little string. Set that at the edge of one of your eyes and plop it down there, and then chop that off right there. And we'll do the same thing on the bottom, but even smaller. And sometimes it takes a while to get a tiny enough piece, like it smushes between your fingers or it breaks off. So just have a little patience there. Set it on the other side, and then you can go at an angle for your knife so it smooths. Take your sculpting tool to just smooth that on in. And we can do that on the other eye. We're rolling it out. And if you want to do the top eyelids at the same time, you can do that to make sure they're kind of even, or you can do them separately. All depends on personal preference. Like so. You can also just smush it off. Sometimes I like to smooth from the top like this. This always takes a minute. Once we have those eyelids, I like to even them into the forehead. So take a little bit of clay, roll it out, and then starting at the top of the nose, we will add that, flatten it into there, and then break it off wherever you think your person's lower forehead space is. Do it on the other side. I'm just going to smooth this in, make it one cohesive piece with the nose. Now this is where you can turn your person a little more masculine or feminine. Sometimes a heavier brow will look a little more masculine. Sometimes a lighter one, a little more feminine. Same with the nose and the chin and such. It might take a lot of smoothing. And these people can look a little weird at the beginning. I mean, at every stage almost till the end, they can look a little odd. If you've accidentally flattened your forehead, you can add a little more, like I need to do. And when I add pieces to the forehead, I like to go all the way across almost, just so that there isn't a random kind of line or bump. And if you're unsure about a feature, start by just adding a tiny bit of clay to that area. You can always add more. It's a little bit harder to take it away. I mean, it's possible, but now for this eye portion, it's a little tricky, but if you start on one side and work your way around, you want to just smooth it while maintaining that eyelid portion so that they smooth together, and then you can tap it with your finger. This can also be done with a potter's needle or something. Just continue to smooth. And if it's not working from one way, you can switch directions. Now, I'll show you how to make a smile. If you want your person to be smiling with their teeth, I will show you that in a minute, but if you want them to be just smiling or just have a blank mouth, you can draw a line where you want their direction to be, roll tiny little pieces of clay, set them on either side, and then that's what you've got. But I'll show you how to do a smile here. Draw up to one corner of where their smile is, over to the other. Take an indenting tool and just indent in the center, kind of pull down, so tap around until you have a little shape. Now this is just a super simple smile. You can experiment with this. Take a little bit of white clay, roll it into a little oval, slightly flatten it, and then you want it to go evenly from one side to the other unless your person doesn't have an even smile. Try to taper those edges and set it in, tapping those edges so they come to rest on either side. I like to indent thoroughly on the edges and give a little wiggle as well. Indenting at this edge and then wiggling down across the chin. And then you can do the lips in two ways. You can just indent a little space here, or you can roll out the tiniest bit of clay you've rolled out so far and plop it right in the center of the base, and then smooth that in, just slightly tapping and adjusting. Takes a minute for all these fine details. And if you found your person's chin has disappeared, you can always add that back. And then take the smallest bit of clay to plop, and you can smooth it in. When you're smoothing, smooth slowly. Don't try to rapidly smooth, otherwise you might smush other features of your person's face. Now, sometimes you can add these lines for their smile. You can start by rolling a tiny bit of clay again. Start below the eye, below the front of the eye, in between where that nose and that section is, to create a little line and bring it down round to the chin. You can do the same on the other side. Make sure that that front edge is tapered a little bit when you set it in there. And if your person has creases or wrinkles, those can be added too with indents from your silicone dowel tools or your potter's needle or stuff like that. So these guys you just very delicately smooth in. You can smooth portions in with your finger as well. And again, these features are just kind of basic features that most everyone has, but kind of in different degrees. You can always make them less prevalent or more so. Now, you can always add just a tiny ball of clay here to make it look like they're smiling, right here. Or to give them a little bit more of a smile, right here like so. And you can smooth those portions in. For the nostrils, we'll take our tool here and just plop little holes in there. And you can make them as big or as small as you would like. Next, we'll need the ears. And this is something I'm still working on, but we'll just roll 2 balls and then roll them into ovals. Set those right back here on your person. You'll go back about an eye or an eye and a half from the side here on both sides. And you'll go in line with the eyes around to the nose, the end of the nose. Make sure they're far back enough where you can put hair right here. Plop those on there, see if they're even, and then smooth them in all the way around. Smooth the other one all the way around. Then what we'll do is take a ball tool, and you can take a look at a picture of an ear to get a better idea of it, but make a loop from the top about where the bottom of the eye is around. Give it a little tap so that it looks even. Make a little indent here, and you can give them a little indent for the earlobe, like that. Next, we'll do some of the last features, like the eyebrows. So take your person's hair color, you'll roll it out into a very thin little snake, depending on how thick their eyebrows are. And I like to have the edges tapered. Set it along the ridge line here that we've added. And if it's too thick, you can always pull it, press one edge and then pull a little bit. And then cut it right there, like so. And then taper this edge again. Set it on the outside edge of the eye, above it. Now, you can make them into whatever shape you would like. Give them a little expression. I also like to take the knife again and just indent them ever so slightly so it looks like they have hairs following the curve of the eyebrow. Now this person, I'll be adding hair once they're baked. I'll be adding a little bit of hair to the top here and then around and then that sort of thing. You can do the same concept as with the eyebrows to a mustache or a goatee. And then one of the last steps here is taking a smidge bit of white clay with your potter's needle. You'll just make a little flick. Set it on your finger to see if it's a good size, and then plop it on the black part of your person's eye. Don't press it in yet though. Flick another one, set it on your finger, take that clay, set it on the other eye. Then you can take your little silicone dowel tool to adjust those, be a good space apart from each other or to look in the direction you want them to be looking. Once you're happy with it, just give them a little tap, and that's how I sculpt a head. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hope you make some awesome sculptures. I'd love to see them. Feel free to send photos of your sculptures and have a great day. Bye.